Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Get CME for this episode by clicking on the CME link in the show notes. Today, we welcome back Karla Lester. She is a pediatrician and a certified life and weight coach. Her recent Kevin MD article is titled Surviving a Manipulative CEO, My Experience with Gaslighting. Karla, welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me. Always appreciate it.
Now, for those who are interested in hearing Karla's story, she's been on many times. Just go to kevinmd.com/podcast, upper right-hand corner, search for Karla's name to hear her story. But I want to get right into your most recent article, Surviving a Manipulative CEO, My Experience with Gaslighting. How did this article and story come together?
Well, it's a long story, but I feel like I need to get it out. I almost had to do it for myself to kind of purge this story. As my first article, so published in kevinmd.com, so thanks for the platform, as I always am grateful for. I had to get it out. And what I experienced was 3.5 years ago, I resigned per my attorney's directive, effective immediately from my high-level job at a children's hospital after building a population health center that was founded on the resources that I built from scratch in my nonprofit, Teach a Kid to Fish. And what I experience is unfortunately what so many physicians who advocate for patient safety and quality and nurses and anyone in healthcare is experiencing as an epidemic. And that is toxic emotional abuse and gaslighting. And so it was extremely difficult and has been and continues to be difficult for me to intentionally heal from what was the trauma of up to 20 individuals gaslighting me at different points as I spoke up for patients, which I would do the same thing again and endure that to speak up for patients in the mission of the organization. So it's been intentional healing, and I've wondered, how am I going to share this story? And so what I'm finding is I'm getting more reach outs from physicians at the same organization who are experiencing what I experienced, and I'm able to help them. But what I was recognizing is it's the gaslighting, and we can't fix or solve these toxic and broken corporate healthcare systems, which children's hospitals are even corporate healthcare, which is sad. We cannot fix and solve. But if we can stay out of the gaslight tango and not engage, my hope is that I can help other physicians who are suffering and victims of gaslighting recognize gaslighting, gain some clarity so that they can better determine more readily than I did their next step, whether it's to get out, move on, or who they can align with who can actually help them if they're experiencing this.
Now, for those who didn't get a chance to read your article yet, give us a few anecdotes or stories that really highlighted that gaslighting experience.
Well, first of all, I read the book, The Gaslight Effect by Dr. Robin Stern, who I noticed you had on your podcast recently talking about gaslighting. So I hope everyone will listen to that podcast and read her article. So I talked about the king, so the president and CEO, because the culture is set at the top. I didn't know his past history, where he was at a former children's hospital. But I noticed when he came at the same time I was launching the center, the population health center that I was leading. And he came at the same time. He was touted to be this really amazing global leader. I met with him. I was like, oh, wow, I'm drinking the Kool-Aid here. This is exciting time for expansion. We need this. And I noticed right away that he lied a lot. And so
what would be an example of that?
He would say, oh, we have these strategic partnerships with, for research. And I knew that that wasn't the case, but, in order to recruit faculty, which his wife was hired as the faculty recruiter, which I was in small meetings with him a lot because I was the community outward, community health for the hospital and the face of it, like the front porch is what we called me and our center. And so I was in a lot of meetings and we'd refer to her as his bedroom buddy or his pillow partner. Not only is she an amazing faculty recruiter, so to recruit faculty, to do research, what do you need? This really, powerful infrastructure operationally between, the medical center or, whatever. I'm not going to go into that, but I knew that that wasn't the case. But then he started lying about different outcomes and saying that, we're affecting, infant mortality rates, and that was a real problem in the area, in the community. And so, I mean, of course we want to do that and we want to resource it, but when you just lie about it and make up outcomes, and so my thing was, I'm uncomfortable with that. I would like to put resources into that issue. I would like to actually be able to say that for real and have that be a truth, but we're not going to get anywhere if he makes it up. So then I was told, well, what are you going to do about it? Because I'm like, he just lies. And then there was a meeting and how it affected me. And I started to get retaliated against, because you don't speak up against the king, is at a community physician meeting in my community. And they were looking to expand. Physicians came, he was speaking and presenting outcomes. And he said, for the clinic that I had created with children's, the weight management clinic that I had led, it took me 3 years, and my nonprofit resourced all the community programs. He said that we have better than national outcomes for our patients, which is untrue, but we had some really exciting collaborations with the university, looking at program data, looking at ACEs, social determinants of health, quality of life measurements, not just BMI. I mean, we were really getting somewhere. And unfortunately, after I said, hey, that's not true, I just assumed he's misinformed. Marketing person put the slides together, he just read them off. So I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt, I'm sticking up for him. And then I said, what we have is even more exciting, is opportunity for NIH grants and collaborations and to really measure outcomes. And then I get a calendar invite, heroes, from the vice president of pediatrics, who's not a physician. And so then it ended up being that meeting was canceled, but they started to retaliate. They cut the agreement with the university. We were providing behavioral supports with them, with the PhD students. They cut the behavioral supports. And the more I spoke up and said, we need to, build the capacity, the patients are complex, then I got pushed out of meetings I wasn't involved in, and was told I was going to be replaced with an untrained nurse practitioner, which of course I was not okay with. And then they said, we're just filling you in, we expect you to be supportive. So the irony is, I'm at this hospital, I'm leading the center, I'm spending a day a week in the clinic wanting to expand it and lead it to a higher level, which is what I got hired to do. And then it was just this confusing gaslighting, and they said, we expect you to be supportive. And they didn't allow me to interview the new nurse practitioner who they replaced me with in this community where I am and where I have my nonprofit. And so I said, that'll be my last day. I don't agree with that level of care. So then everything unraveled and at the hospital, and there were bigger issues, and a lot of surgeons left, and everything was kind of unraveling for the king. And then they continued to gaslight me. And then they threatened that as the surgeons left and people left, that they were going to close down that clinic, that Heroes Clinic in Lincoln. So anyway, that's where I took the article, was the stages of gaslighting. Stage 1 is disbelief, where they say something and you're just kind of shocked and confused. And then stage 2 is when you get defensive. So of course you're going to defend yourself, which I want doctors to recognize they're being gaslighted and then stay out of it. And then stage 3 is depression. So I talked about my last meeting I had with the king and how that was just a really scary meeting, almost out of the movie Gaslight, starring Ingrid Bergman. I had never heard the term gaslighting. I had never watched the movie. I had no clue that this was gaslighting. And so I was meeting with him, and people said, you need to meet with him. You need to meet with him, not recognizing it was a setup. And I drive the hour to meet with the king. My family and I were going to Europe the next day. And I had done enough coaching to where I was like, I decided to show up just supportive. I will see patients in the 2 communities in Omaha and Lincoln to keep the clinics open. It's really important. And it was just so chilling. So all the people who were supposed to be at the meeting, they bowed out at the last minute. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it. Oh, I'm sorry, I can't make it. So it was just me and the king. in his big office, and him like, why do you care? Why do you care about heroes, Karla? And I heard that, it's just a personality issue. Like, they try to blame it on that. And it's your fault. It's your behavior. And it was just this strange thing. So I was like, this is going south in my head, and I'm here again to support, and I will
Mm-hmm.
see patients. Let me know what you need, which really ticked him off
Mm-hmm.
because he said, we're bringing a top-notch surgeon in who's going to lead all the childhood obesity efforts. What are you talking about? It's the most important issue, as they cut all the programs that were
Sure, sure.
supporting it. So anyway, it's a long story, but in that meeting, I was able to just show up, for the mission, which I will always do, and even outside of the organization, and I can do more. But I was proud of myself. And he said, well, I'm not going to micromanage this. And then when I left there, I was shaken up and I had to drive the hour back to Lincoln. And I remember calling my husband and said, I'll never meet with him again.
Mm-hmm.
And I called a member of the board who was a part of the gaslighting. I didn't realize it at the time, but was a big part of it. And I said, I'll never meet with him again. That was a terrible meeting. And I sent an email to everybody, and I'm really glad I did. And I
Mm-hmm.
said, that was a terrible meeting. He doesn't get it. I'm never meeting with him again. So then we went to Europe. And then a few days later, we got the email because things started to unravel, and the board, just came to a head, all of the things that he had done at the former place and that he had done here.
Mm-hmm.
And they recognized, it was this huge liability issue. And so I'm assuming, so anyway, there was a notification he was retiring within a month. So I
Sure.
felt victorious.
Yeah.
And
So,
then that didn't happen.
so you mentioned that it wasn't just you, it was a lot of the surgeons had also left. So what was the feeling among the clinical staff as a whole? Did they feel as a group they were being gaslit? What was the environment like at that hospital?
Like Lord of the Flies. I
Yeah.
mean, we didn't know all of the things, and so it wasn't like, I mean, I do know the surgeons there, and I'm not going to speak to I know some inside information, of course, but, everyone was speaking up for patient safety who left or resigned. And I wouldn't say that there was any opportunity for us to be together and decide, and say, oh, we're being gaslit, or some sort of common approach to it. I don't think they had any clue what I was specifically going through.
Mm-hmm. Now, did the CEO, was his entire staff part of that gaslighting to kind of maintain that environment, or was it just him?
Oh, it was the whole staff.
Mm-hmm.
And of the 20 individuals, 14 are gone. So 6 are there. I think 4 will, who knows? But I just can't imagine that 4 of them, just for many reasons, will hopefully be gone, and the sad thing is that's just the milieu, that's the environment that's there. And so how I decided to approach it is, I'm a writer. So I write all these articles. I'm writing a book about, my whole career has been addressing childhood obesity. So I'm writing a book about that. And that's what I do for my work, and is my passion to help children and teens. But also, this has been a calling and a purpose that's been put on me. So how I've decided to do it is approach it in the way of really helping physicians to recognize gaslighting, and then go through each of the 20 characters who were involved in it. And I haven't decided who's up next, but I may write another article. So there's different levels. There's the toxicity that's at the top and sets the culture. Culture is set at the top. So whether that person's a narcissist, I'm pathologized, or even worse, I think in our case here. And then there's this level of shapeshifters. So people who want to keep their jobs, they were just saying, like, who's loyal to this king? Who's going to show up and be willing to make up outcomes to suit the target audience, be willing to control the narrative, be willing to silence anyone who speaks up. So those are the 3 strategies that he employed. And those are the strategies that everyone who was a part of that emotional abuse of physicians and gaslighting, they were willing to employ those as well. So they're rewarded, and some of them even are promoted to higher positions.
So let's talk more about that.
Mm-hmm.
This story is not uncommon to a lot of hospital systems. I've read many, many stories about physicians being gaslit. So what are some signs and red flags that they should be aware of?
First of all, I coach people to do not meet with anyone alone. So make sure that if somebody calls you to a meeting, you want to make sure that you're not going to be alone. And if you are, you can ask them to record it or bow out of it, make up an excuse. Oh, I'm sorry, I just got a text. And then you want to document everything. First of all, recognize when they do the U-turn and they start to kind of create some self-doubt within you, or some confusion, or like I kept thinking, oh, I just need 5 minutes and I can fix this. And that they didn't have clarity, and don't believe that they're going to arrive to some value or some level of ethics that you ascribe to. That's not going to happen. So you're not going to fix and solve anything. So decide ahead of time. Like if you're going to meet with somebody, decide ahead of time, I'm showing up for the mission. I'm showing up to support patient safety and quality, and have that in your head the entire time you're meeting with them. And then for me, what really helped me was, like, I didn't defend myself when he said, oh, I've heard from so-and-so and so-and-so that this is a personality issue and that you're emotional and it's your behavior. And I said, everyone's entitled to their own opinion about me. And just sat there kind of with a smile on my face. And I said, again, I'm here to support the clinics. I'm willing to see patients. I'm willing to do whatever it's going to take, which pissed him off. So anyway, don't engage in the gaslight tango, because it requires a gaslighter and a gaslightee. So it's just like bullying when I'm coaching teens. I mean, these people are bullies, narcissists, whatever. We don't have to pathologize them or do a DSM-5 diagnosis. But what we can do is have an understanding that we're not going to be there to fix and solve, and that we're not stuck in it. And so bring some clarity when they turn it on you. Don't fall for it. Don't defend yourself. Don't convince them of anything, because that's a waste of your time.
Now, when you say that you should bring someone along with you to the meeting, are we talking about a colleague? Or are we talking about an attorney? What do you mean by that?
Well, if you bring an attorney, you're going to be screwed. I mean, they're going to really try to get you. So I would say definitely bring a colleague from from your department. Oftentimes, unfortunately, HR isn't helpful. If you reach out to HR, that could backfire. It did against me. The vice president of human resources at the time was definitely a part of the gaslighting tactics. Oh, I've never heard of anything like this happening at Children's. I'll get back with you, and never did, So I say somebody from your department who is a like level colleague, and you want to document everything. And I think, I had amazing attorneys who guided me along the way, and they are used to working with physicians and their top employment attorneys. And it's worth having those conversations behind the scenes, which I did have with them along the way. And they would say, Karla, why don't you leave now? So they tried to get me out well before I left. And then it was like, it came to such a head. They were like, what is keeping you here? And it was like Sunday night at 10:30 p.m. And they're like, we are getting you out of there tonight, because it really got to a point where we were all concerned about my physical safety.
Now, once a physician realizes that they're being gaslit, what's their immediate next step?
Take a pause.
Okay.
Okay. I want to say, like, this is gaslighting. Use the word, call it gaslighting. And that is going to be just so powerful in your mind. I'm being gaslighted. There's nothing wrong with you that's happening to you. You don't cause and you don't control it. You can say to yourself, I don't have to be stuck in this. I don't have to fix this. I'm not going to solve this. And so then I think getting some outside support, also, like, owning your truth. Like, you know your truth. You may want to write it down. And I mean, the main thing is we think we have to fix and solve these things. And I want physicians to recognize that you're not going to fix a toxic system.
Hmm.
And so don't go like I did over here and talk to this person. And you know, there's so much self-doubt and confusion. It's like, is this real? Is this, you know? And so don't do that. Own your truth.
At what point should one consider getting outside help, like legal help? At what point did you decide that this is more than I can handle? I need help from an attorney.
Well, if they're asking you to meet, you know, alone, they're asking you to go to meetings and you kind of see the writing on the wall, but I would especially do that. I think, you know, anyone in healthcare these days, anyone who speaks up, whether you're a physician, nurse, or anyone in healthcare, if you speak up and you are correct about a patient safety issue or quality issue, you're going to be retaliated against and you're going to be gaslighted. There's so many people in corporate healthcare who have positions that they should not have, and they know that that they're imposters. So if you are someone who is a threat because you do have the skills and you are doing a wonderful job within that department, you're going to be retaliated against and you're going to be gaslighted. And so just recognize that that's probably going to happen. So if at the moment you have any sort of concern about patient safety and you're needing to speak up, and you need to, and you know, you have it documented, you need to find a good employment attorney who works with physicians. I had one involved with me all along as we moved the Teach a Kid to Fish, my nonprofit assets, over to create the center that I led. And there were so many red flags with that process and so much gaslighting that started then that my attorney had to be involved, like literally from the start. So for years, my attorneys were involved.
We're talking to Karla Lester. She's a pediatrician and a certified life and weight coach. Her Kevin MD article is Surviving a Manipulative CEO, My Experience with Gaslighting. Karla, tell us some of your take-home messages that you want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
Well, first of all, my whole heart is with you if you are a physician or a nurse experiencing gaslighting and toxic narcissistic emotional abuse in healthcare. You are not alone. You are not broken. You are wholly good. Okay? You can recognize gaslighting. You can get out of the tango. You don't have to continue to be a victim. Please don't try to fix or solve something that's so toxic and broken that you can't. Like, please create a pause, recognize gaslighting, name it, get the supports you need so that you can have clarity to determine what will be the next best step in your career, whether that's intentionally healing from the gaslighting and then moving forward, finding a niche within where you are that you can work in and show up for patients and the mission of the organization, or whether you need to do something different. You're not stuck.
Karla, thanks again for coming back on the show, sharing your story, time, and insight.
Thank you.